It's still New Dawn on Ogun State Television, and we're still in business. We're getting on, and this is the interview segment. By the way, you can join us. You can watch this live on Facebook. You can link up on Ogtv, log on to Ogtv on Facebook, and join the conversation. We have a guest in the house this morning. We're looking at challenges of public health in Nigeria, and I have somebody in the house who should know, who knows, and is seeing different worlds actually, and it's a pharmacist by profession, and I'm sure he would be competent enough to give us different dimensions. We'll try to look at different perspectives. We want to look at the challenges of public health in Nigeria. I'd like to welcome Dr. Olutola Shobande into this edition, New Dawn. Doctor, you're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right, Akim Akintunde is also here. We're going to be working together. He's going to be firing from that side.
Yeah, yes, it's around 6:30. Yeah, health issues in Nigeria. Of course, what do we refer to as public health? Let's start on that premise, so that we know the nitty-gritty of what we're about, or what we want to talk about, or what we're talking about. We've started talking. So what is public health?
Well, public health is, I see public health as a situation whereby the government is place a strong emphasis on the well-being, the healthcare, in this case, on its population. So the well-being of Nigerians is quite important. I think
we're talking about health that should be accessible, that should be affordable, if not completely free.
Well, nothing is ever completely free, but I think to a large extent the government should be responsible for the well-being of its people. I've been in the U.S. for 40 years, just returning home because the right thing to do is to come back and give back. If I spent 40 years in America and I learned all these things and I'm not able to give back to the people of Nigeria, then I wouldn't be doing, what my parents taught me. They were selfless people. My late father was a politician, but also people's lawyer. He didn't make a lot of noise. My mother started at school back in 1964, and she stayed in her school and always ensuring that all kinds of families get their children educated. So I studied them very, very closely, and because of that, I had to return home to do something as a pharmacist, healthcare. We say health is wealth in Nigeria, but we just say it, it's almost like it doesn't have a meaning. So post-COVID, I think we now have to get serious.
Now, when you say health is wealth, is health really wealth? Within the actual realities now, some will say money is wealth, because if you don't have money, right, you're likely going to get, you're going to get sick. You're likely going to so many other challenges. And so when you say health is wealth, can you really say, is health really wealth?
It's a common saying.
It's a common saying. But is it really fact? Is it really a fact now? Can you really say health is really wealth?
I love Nigeria more than most people. I love Nigerians. But in Nigeria, we don't always, mean what we say. So when we say health is wealth, it's just a slogan, but it should mean more, because at one point or the other, everybody has gotten sick. It doesn't have to be COVID, malaria. And when you feel like this illness has almost taken your life or is really consuming you, when you recover, you will appreciate life a little better.
Now, you've been in the U.S. for about 40 years.
That's correct.
The terrains, You've been there. You've watched the health environment there. Could you make a comparative? Is there a comparison? Can we have a kind of a comparative analysis? What obtains there and what obtains here? Within the few times that you have come back home, what are the areas, you know, that when you just think your head?
Maybe Tuji would just say, what is public health like there?
Yeah.
Vis-a-vis the Nigerian environment now.
Right. Well, unfortunately, Nigeria has some of the smartest people in the world. The world knows that. You know, in fact, when you leave the shores of this country, you say you're a Nigerian. Some might worry that maybe you're a 419 person, you know, hush puppy, but at the same time, they know that, you know, the majority of Nigerians are some of the smartest people on the face of this planet, you know, regardless of skin color. But unfortunately, we're not practicing, you know, that smartness, you know, that Nigerianness that we show, you know, that people are proud of, you know, when you see people doing well outside the country. There's not enough of it, you know, happening here in the country, you know, and that's why we're getting it wrong, you know. So I think we need a lot of restructuring. When you look at America, everything is well organized, you know, people play their roles, things function. I'll give a typical example. We build roads. You know, I drive around the southwestern part of the country these days, and it's nice to see all these highways and roads getting fixed. But the problem is maintenance. So the same way we need to maintain roads, we need to maintain our health. You know, so that's why, after practicing pharmacy for so many years across 5 states in the U.S., I now decided I want to do something differently. I'm starting a new pharmacy here in Abeokuta, Transatlantic Holistic Pharmacy. And the goal is really to help unite Nigerians through health, number one, and also help build bridges with the U.S. The U.S. is not a perfect country. We still struggle with issues of race. I call it like it is. And U.S. has that challenge to deal with the issue of race. And U.S. will have to deal with the issue of race if they are to compete with China and some of these places. Same thing in Nigeria. Nigeria is struggling with diversity. It should be a blessing when the country is diverse. So both countries have similar issues, struggling with diversity, but we have to use that to our strength, not as a position of weakness. So my project, I want to try to unite Nigerians by providing job opportunities, getting some money into the pharmaceutical sector, you know, so.
All right, now let's also let's come to the nitty-gritty now, public health. From your own perspective, what are the challenges that we have here? You know, what are the things that you wished were done better?
Yeah. Yes. Well, during the EndSARS saga, I was in Nigeria around that time, and I thought, even before leaving the U.S. For Nigeria, I'd visited Mexico, then on to the U.S., and then I came in through Istanbul, Turkey on that particular trip during the EndSARS. And I had watched television, watched the Minister for Health, you know, and they did a lot of things very, very well. I was very proud of them, but you know, like everything else in Nigeria, maybe no follow through, or everything just literally fell apart, because what I expected to happen after the lockdown, you know, post-COVID, it's not happening at all. I thought when you have a situation where there's a pandemic, and even Mr. President wasn't able to travel outside the country, I thought now there will be a reawakening that, especially when it comes to pharmaceuticals, drug manufacturing Nigeria should be looking into producing even medical supplies, into producing its own. And we do have manufacturers in this country. They need to be encouraged. But people making substandard drugs, they need to look for something else to do or step up their game, because Nigerians deserve better. I will support manufacturers in this country from any part of the country, but I will not support anybody making substandard drugs for Nigerians, because it's causing a lot of confusion in the country.
There was a time we had NAFDAC. I think NAFDAC is still working, and so they are the agency in charge of foods and drug administration and control. But now I want us to look at the state of our hospitals. Have you been privileged to go around, not only in the state, across the state, or how would you make your assessment?
What's your view?
What's your view?
Very good question. I had a good opportunity of understudying a wonderful gentleman by the name of Dr. Olusegun Ajunwo. Dr. Ajunwo is highly respected in many circles in this country when it comes to medical practice and patriotism. He was the President's personal physician under President Olusegun Obasanjo administration. I discovered him while I was busy doing I was going on campaign state to state doing free diabetes screening services. I started back in 2001 under Governor Lamadeshino of Oyo State, late. So in fact, late Governor Defarati, I diagnosed him with diabetes. So I've done some, when I say I've gone for 40 years, people think I know the streets of the roads of this country more than many people from doing my diabetes work. So you mentioned NAFDAC. I worked very closely with NAFDAC NIPRID, which is the research and development arm of pharmaceuticals in this country, all within FCT, and also NAFDAC, PCN, and NIPRID. Very, very important. The problem I see with Nigeria, the situation within healthcare in Nigeria is, I say this all the time, very little money goes into health. So now, the little money that goes into health is geared towards hospitals and clinics, because most of the ministers for health we've had in the country, wonderful folks. One of them is my great mentor, Professor Yitayo Lambo. He served as Minister for Health when Dr. Dora Kunyili was there. Wonderful guys, but they focus on hospitals and clinics. So very little money gets into pharmacy. And when you're not producing your own drugs, it's a big problem. And I'm talking about producing drugs that your people can believe in. 5 years ago, I was in Indonesia. That's the world's most populous Muslim nation. Very well organized. They produce all their own drugs in Indonesia. If they can do it, Nigeria should be able to produce its own drugs.
Okay, aside pharmacy, because I know now we have a bias. You are in pharmacy, so everything will be looked at from the prism of pharmacy. But beyond pharmacy, let's move a little away from pharmacy, although we are still going to come back to it.
Right.
What are the other, being a medical practitioner or health practitioner, what are those areas that you would have loved us to improve on as a nation?
In healthcare, within healthcare, everything needs improvement. When Dr. Ajunwo was the CMD for National Hospital Abuja, I watched hospital CMD, Chief Medical Director, in action. You go to this National Hospital in Abuja and you're proud that we have something like that in Nigeria. And many of the CMDs around the country are doing very, very well. They're doing the utmost best with very little. The problem is funding. I could care less really, who the Minister for Health is, whether a physician or a pharmacist. But I think in the history of Nigeria, we've only had a pharmacist at the helm, only once for about 3 months. That was Prince Adelusi, something like that, Julie Pharmacy. Yes, I had an opportunity to meet him back in 2005, thereabout. Because, just imagine if Nigeria has its own strong manufacturing base for drugs that Nigerians can believe in. The population here, 200 million people more. We start producing our own drugs. We'll create a lot of employment, for our teeming youth. It's so bad when people are coming out of university and they don't have jobs. People should be bothered by that, especially healthcare professionals.
Okay, if sincere, whenever Tunji asks this question, you draw back to the of pharmacy, I'll stay with you there. Okay. I can understand the bias. And my question is, why do you think substandard drugs or fake drugs, as you call it, as dangerous as they are, thrives in Nigeria, and it can never thrive like that from where you're coming from?
Even China, the drugs that China sends to the U.S., China, dares not put substandard drugs to the U.S., but these things get way down.
So what are we not doing right in Nigeria that is making the, I don't know, the syndicate to thrive? You believe it's thriving?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, because everybody wants to do business with Nigeria. I mean, look at, I call it parent, we're members of the, Commonwealth, I think. Even though I'm still not sure what we benefit from our lovely friends in the UK. They made a funny policy, banning Nigerians from going to their country, literally. But I'm glad they reversed it. We appreciate Great Britain. Everybody loves English Premier League. Chelsea. Nobody cares about Super Eagles anymore.
Don't go to Chelsea. Let's just leave
Arsenal. Because I couldn't believe it that UK. Yeah. Well, now Nigeria didn't start the COVID problem. So if we're not doing some things right here, what we need is assistance, from developed countries, especially those that should know better out in the UK. We're members of the Commonwealth. We rarely get visas to visit these countries, So I think I don't like the double standard, and I'm glad they changed their policies, because we still like Great Britain. We like the Queen. We do. I think, but back to you were talking about substandard.
Yeah. Why is it thriving here and it cannot thrive from where you're coming from?
Because when you have a population of over 200 million people and you're not producing anything of your own, and when you produce your own stuff, there's too much substandard stuff coming out from all angles. So all that happens is, everybody's trying to save money. So we get it from China, we get it from Belgium. It's, motor parts, they would even tell you, do you want Belgium or you want China or you want whatever different brand. So we're getting all these products in from, from all parts of the world. Because if you sell matches, if the people need it in Nigeria, you'll make money. We have the population. Forget about the oil, So we are a dumping ground for a whole bunch of BS. I would say bullshit in America, But Americans tell it like it is, So that's the beauty of people, of Americans generally. We don't beat around the bush. So what Nigeria needs to do is to start producing, things, the quality stuff. I always give this example. There's a cream called Kenalog cream. Kenalog is a steroid. used for very bad rash, eczema, that type of situation. The one made here in Nigeria, just put a little bit on your finger, rub it, it would feel like you're rubbing sand on your hand. Now imagine you apply that to your skin, We can make better products. All they're doing is they're skipping a final step. When you mix your active ingredient and your base, you mix it up together, you get your ointment or you get your cream. But there's a final step called the milling process where you get to blend the particles real well into the base. They skip that process and then they give us rubbish. Manufacturers, I love you guys, but you need to make the right stuff. Don't sell Nigerians short.
Okay. Before Tuju comes in, while we're trying to grapple with the health system in Nigeria, and of course, which we know that cannot be overemphasized, the importance, but incessant strike here and there do come in. Doctors, resident doctors, National Association of Doctors here and there. Why do you think this cannot happen from where you're coming from? Doctors going on strike?
Right. Yeah.
Aberration.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. Nigeria exports brains, people with brains. And, it's very, very sad that a country that produces so many, the top PhD earners in the U.S. are Nigerians.
The top?
The top PhD earners.
Okay, top PhD earners.
They're Nigerians in America. Not too many people know this fact. So our parents gear us up for education. Education is everything here in Nigeria. But unfortunately, we have our priorities mixed up. When you have a situation where your healthcare professionals, all of them want to leave the country, it's very, very dangerous for any society. And something really needs to be done about that. We have to do something.
When your health professionals want to leave the country, then now let's look at why is it that despite even the budget, because every year government makes a budget for health, even though you say there's not adequate funding and all of that, our leaders travel outside the country, they go. Why don't we have a functional hospital in Nigeria? Is it really that capital intensive that we can't invest, or government cannot put money and give us a functional hospital that we don't have to travel back and forth? Is it really difficult to get these things done?
Yeah, we have to keep talking to our lovely politicians, to do something about that. I think maybe for some, it's a good way of getting foreign exchange and then going overseas, to enjoy the good life.
But does it pay us?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't at all. So that has to change. That has to change. It's a matter of having our priorities straightened. But I think government has to really put emphasis on healthcare. More money has to go into healthcare, and then because I think what's happening right now, if you give them, if you apportion in the budget, if you apportion a certain amount into healthcare, perhaps about 80% or more will go into hospitals and clinics, and even they're still lacking a lot of stuff. So the rest goes to the pharmacy, and when you don't have that, research and development going on, I'll give a typical example. There's a drug that was discovered right here in Nigeria, Nicosan, for sickle cell disease. There wasn't enough clinical trials, because corruption set in and then literally killed the project, But if we have our research and if we invest money into research and development, drugs like Nicosan for, sickle cell disease is called an orphan disease. in America, in the Western world, literally. Orphan disease are diseases that doesn't affect the people that matter, literally. Okay, so or not too many people have them, so they call it orphan disease. So but it's a black people's disease. So we need to start trying to look out for it, take care of ourselves.
Do you belong to the Pharmaceutical Association of Nigeria? You?
Since I've been a member since about 2004, 2005. Yeah, I'm actually in pharmacy. If you've been practicing in the U.S. or anywhere else, to practice in Nigeria, you have to do what we call the Foreign Pharmacist Equivalency exams.
Okay.
So I spent about 6 weeks going through that process in Nsukka, UNN.
Okay.
And by the grace of God, by the time I left, everybody was calling me Igwe.
Okay.
And, so I think I'm the authentic. They say I'm the authentic Igwe.
So do you think the Pharmaceutical Association of Nigeria is doing enough in the area of curbing substandard drugs? Even the one that is manufactured in Nigeria, we know there are fake drugs. We know they cannot be members of the Pharmaceutical Association, but as a body, what steps have been taken to make sure that we are safe? Because we don't know jack. Once we see a drug, and we see that some of these fake drugs could even have NAFDAC number, just like you said earlier on. So, what is the association doing to make us safe?
I think NAFDAC, the PCN, umbrella body, are doing a fantastic job. They're doing the best they can with the little resources they have. We always have to remember that this is a country of more than 200 million people. So it's a tough challenge, and out of desperation, sometimes people will do anything they can do to make money, at other people's expense, unfortunately. So these are areas that we have to help NAFDAC and the PCN do a better job. We can find out what the challenges are. Definitely, it's mostly financial. There's just not enough people, to go around. I know some of these people. They're fantastic people. They're doing their very best, even at the cost of their lives sometimes. We all know the story of Dr. Dorak, really. So we have our work cut out for us, because this is all we have, and this country is so important to Africa. 1 out of every 4 Africans is right here from Nigeria, in spite of all the challenges we have. But I've been around for 3 months here. This is my longest stay since I've been gone in 1981. Usually I come 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. But 3 months I've been on ground. So I've been able to see a lot of things. I see a lot of challenges, but I see an incredible amount of opportunities here in Nigeria.
Okay, now, so beyond the opportunities, let me quickly take you a little back. That Nikosal you were talking about, is it the same thing as Oriata? There was this Oriata, something that I think one professor in Obafemi Awolowo University, discovered for the fight of sickle cell. Is it the same? Did they get that ingredient? Is it the outcome of that?
There might be. I wouldn't say it's an outcome of that. I keep hearing about the Oriata, something, but you'll be surprised. Nigeria is so blessed with. I was at the herbarium at UNN in Nsukka. They have one at OAU and perhaps around different pharmacy schools in this country, and we're just not really tapping into this stuff. In 2005 I was in India. I gave a speech at New Delhi University, and in India they have what Ayurveda. They don't play with the Ayurveda practitioners at all. They have so much respect. They're almost as well respected as medical doctors in India. Well, here we have all the
alternative. Are they alternative
It's more like alternative medicine, from plant sources here. We have abundance of it here in Nigeria, but there's no research going on. Again, it's all about research and development of drugs that we can believe
But
in.
some people would say that even the funding that you say, is lacking, that the few funds that government, earmarks finally ends up in private pockets. So what is the assurance that even if government eventually puts in much more money,
Right.
It's
it will still not be an avenue for massive corruption?
Yeah, looting is a big problem we have in Nigeria because everybody is complaining there's no money, there's no money. I go around the country, I'm seeing all kinds of lovely, buildings going up, so there's no money in Nigeria. I can never understand that.
State-of-the-art designs.
Yes, all kinds of designs going up, all kinds of buildings, so it's not ghost building these things. All I will ask for from patriotic Nigerians, we need more patriotic Nigerians. If you're making money and you're building these buildings, you should feel a sense of responsibility, sense of duty for the people of this country, state, country, to do something. Let's talk about COVID. I'm sorry, I have to go back there. You see, the billion-dollar question nobody is asking, not from outside Nigeria, not from within, is Nigerians are not dropping dead like the situation we're looking at in Europe, in America, okay? And so why? The question is, how come? We don't have the facilities.
We don't have. I agree.
We don't have the facilities. Thank God we have Agbo, we have this and that. But the thing is, I can almost bet you the immunity there are many people, forget about the vaccines, because just before the show we're talking about, how many people do you think, have gotten vaccinated in this country?
Out of 200 million.
Out of 200 million people or more.
Up to 5 million,
So people, I believe many Nigerians have developed some kind of immunity against this virus. But because we don't do research, we don't know what's inside people's blood. Because if we do that research and we find out people have antibodies against the various subtypes of this COVID virus, we could actually be helping the world. You understand? Instead of just oil all the time, we can be selling monoclonal antibodies to the rest of the world and saving, Africa can start saving, the world for a change.
So you feel that, the fact that in the tropics around here, we've not really had that massive number of deaths, it could possibly be something else, because many people are attributing it to our environment, that maybe the sun, the climate here and all of that, But then this dimension it's worth looking into.
Yeah. You could attribute it to the sun, to our weather, to all kinds of things, but something is protecting us, see. I've developed all kinds of skin reactions, because this is just my longest stay. Mosquito bite sometimes when I travel or that sort of thing. But the other day I went to my mother's village, Ilewo. My late mother was from Yewa. And we're driving, crossing this popular river. And there are people swimming in the river. The river was just brown. And I'm saying, those people swimming in that river, COVID is the last thing they can worry about. They cannot worry about COVID at all. And my PA was even telling me that some of them were drinking that water. And it's been like that for a long, long time. So COVID, we need to test what's inside the people's blood in this country. Because I strongly believe if we check, there are many Nigerians that are, look, almost 1 million dead by now in America. The last time I was on this show, I said, we don't keep data, but maybe we've lost about 100,000 people. My lovely sister, next to me, Miss Simeat, says we haven't lost up to 5,000 people. Now compare even 100,000 to about 1 million.
With a country that has all the facilities.
All the facilities.
We have all the facilities in the U.S. You understand? So we're waiting for Bill Gates to say, okay, here's $50 million. You guys go and research and find out, well, what do you people have in your blood? And you're not, we are dropping dead in the U.S. You guys are not dropping dead.
You guys are not dropping dead.
Yeah.
You actually mentioned the word, the Yoruba word, agbo, during this discussion. And of course, that brings me to alternative medicine. And when you talk about alternative medicine, maybe you are also talking about alternative drugs. And that comes to you.
That's great.
What's the position of pharmacists generally, especially from this part of the world, and maybe that will bring me to PSN, Pharmaceutical Association of Nigeria, the issue of agbo and alternative drugs. What's your position?
Yes, alternative drug works because, most medicines are derived from plant sources anyways, right? The key problem is standardization, okay? When you have the difference between, like in America, you have prescription drugs and you have over-the-counter drugs. Let's look at vitamins, for example. A lot of vitamins, you could lay claim and say, oh, it does this, does that. They say, okay, wonderful. Okay. They test your drug for two things, efficacy and safety. Stuff they allow to go over the counter there, they have to be safe. U.S. does not play with safety, human safety, or even animal safety for that matter. So safety is very important, but efficacy, that can be questionable. They can still allow it. But prescription drugs, orthodox medicine, there has to be defined, everything has to be, proper research has to be done. We have to know when you ingest, let's say you're taking a medication for pain. You take the tablet, we have to know how long it's going to take before the medication starts working. When the medication starts to work, how long will the effect last? So that we have an idea how much pain relief time you will get before you now have to take the next dose. With the herbs, agbo and things, the problem is you may get a batch that works perfectly, does everything it's supposed to do. Then you get the next batch of the same product that doesn't do anything. And then if you're taking agbo and then you're taking orthodox medicine, we have to worry sometimes about potential drug interactions. So that's the
let me ask this question because as we begin to wrap. Now, one of the things you cannot take away from this part of the world, Nigeria, is the issue of sexual prowess.
Okay. Sexual prowess?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Everybody do.
I'm a very shy guy.
So everybody wants to be, and that is why even the alternative medicine, what they actually talk about is how you can be good, active. You can be active sexually. You still continue to be well. So, and we have a whole lot of drugs. I don't know whether you have come across them that they claim enhance sexual prowess. So, quickly, what is the variability of these drugs? Then another one, we also know that there are sexual enhancement drugs from modern people. How safe are these drugs? Because we found people dying because they want to improve their libido, they want to impress their partners, and they indulge. What should people consider in all these things?
Well, orthodox medicine, let me give an example, Viagra or Cialis. Now, they say take one tablet maybe 50 milligrams or 100 milligrams in terms of Viagra, for example. Lovely blue pills, I've had patients use it. I'm not talking about from personal experience.
Yeah, I understand.
I'm a very funny person sometimes. So Pfizer makes a very good, drug there, Viagra. So, but they say take one tablet about 30 minutes to an hour before sexual activity. Now, here in Nigeria, people want to be Superman. They take 2, they take 3, they take 4. When you start taking more than the recommended daily dose, you're starting to look for, you want to be Superman. You are looking for trouble.
For super death.
You're looking for super death. So you must not overdo it. Now with the, the herbs and the potential efficacy, for, sexual vitality, if you will. Again, you may get a batch that does, what it's supposed to do while, you take them sometimes you don't feel anything. So
it's not consistent. So
no
that's a challenge.
consistency.
Okay, we would have really loved to continue with you. Unfortunately, time is not our friend. We would have loved to look at pediatrics, we would have loved to look at radiology, we would have loved to look at maternal and child health, we would have loved to look at, O&G, we would have just take a public view. Unfortunately, time is not in our favor, and we have to bring the program to a close now. But at least we've done, within the short frame of time, we've tried to look at some of the challenges that we have in the public health sector in Nigeria. And we want to thank you very much for being part of New Dawn for today.
Wow, it's my pleasure. And it's wonderful to be home here in Abeokuta with my very own. Thank you so much for inviting me.
And thanks for that commendation for the coffee.
I will always come back for this. Thank you guys so much.
Right, we'll be talking with Dr. Tayo Olutola Shobande, the pharmacist who spent years in the United States, is back in Nigeria, and we're looking at the challenges of public health in the country.
He's been in the United States since the year Ogtv was created.
That's right.
Yes, we are celebrating our 40th anniversary.
I think I remember that yesterday.
I decided to
I remember when the station was 40.
Wonderful. We'll be celebrating together.
Thank you so very much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. You're still watching New Dawn. After this time out, our next guest, 40 years of Ogtv, we're looking at dimensions. We're looking at people who have played some roles in the process of those 40 years. Stay with us.